Welcome to Create Your Happy, the podcast that empowers conscious women in life, relationship, and business. I'm your host, Christy Holt, happiness, hussy, and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. Now get ready, because on this very special bonus season, we are going to take your entrepreneurial journey to a whole nother level. These uncut conversations are designed to support you as you unleash your entrepreneurial brilliance upon the world. My incredible guests and I have come together with a shared vision to empower women to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and lead with love. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Welcome to this masterclass. I am really excited to have with me today Chanel Robe. And we are going to kick off this incredible masterclass, Boundaries with Grace, Effortless Client Results. And we know you are waiting for it. Now, if you are an entrepreneur, this is for you, right? If you are not yet an entrepreneur catching this on the podcast, or maybe you're just an aspiring entrepreneur and change maker, this is still for you, because you know what? The things that you do in your business also affect the things that you do in your other relationships. So this is a conversation a little bit more geared towards those entrepreneurs, but it is not just for the entrepreneurs in the crowd. So welcome to this masterclass series, Chanel. I'm so excited. My dear new friend, but I feel like we've known each other for ages, and I'm so excited to share another conversation with you. So I would love to actually have you kick us off by just sharing a little bit about who you are and how you ended up here. Speaking of boundaries and people pleasing and becoming the client success strategist that you are today.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Steve. The feeling is totally mutual. Feel like old friends, right? So I am an island girl. I was born and raised in Jamaica. Now I'm island hopping or country hopping, depending on how you look at it. But one of the key things that is a huge piece of my story is that I spent a majority of my life as a people pleaser, right? I was a people pleaser right into my late 20s. And because of people pleasing, I was a consultant at the time. I burnt out twice in corporate, right? Trying to do all the things, trying to keep everybody happy, not just in business, but also, as we talked about, in my personal life too. Because if you're a people pleaser in one area of your life, there's a high chance you're a people pleaser in every single area of your life. And so I spent a whole lot of time biting my tongue. I spent a whole lot of time over giving, going above and beyond, trying to make everybody happy, trying to get everybody's approval, trying to avoid being rejected, trying to avoid being abandoned, all the stuff. Right. And that often meant that from a business perspective, you have extra long meetings, you sacrifice your other priorities to make your clients happy. And all of that stuff. And so that was literally showing up in every single area of my life. And even though, and this is what we're going to be talking about a lot today, is that a lot of times we as business owners, especially when we're high functioning perfectionists, having the persons who have to be in control of everything and, pleasing everybody, we feel that the goal is to get very efficient. And the thing is, we get very efficient at dysfunction, right? But the funny thing is, because you have gotten very efficient at doing something that's a dysfunction for you, it doesn't make you any more effective, right? And so for a long part, even my second burnout, I learned the tools and techniques that around setting the boundaries and getting efficient per se, using the tools and all that stuff, and some of the techniques and strategies that I'll talk about today. But I did not have the mindset shift around not being a people pleaser. And so no surprise again when I ended up 2 years after my first burnout, completely burnt out again and wondering what the hell am I going to be doing with myself, right? And it was through that I literally am like, God, I can't believe I'm in the same situation again. Obviously I don't learn my lesson, right? And I'm like, God, what am I gonna do? And he said to me, leave corporate. And I'm like, Sadie said, what? Leave what? Do what? Because I'm like, what's the option?
Yeah.
right? But I left, and when I left, I only had about 3 months of savings in my bank account. And I'll tell anybody to this day, I left corporate in 2021, March of 2021, and it was the best decision I ever made because suddenly I felt for years I felt I was so busy and I didn't have the time or anything, but that created the space and the time for me to get the mindset shift and the healing from trauma and those behavioral patterns that I needed to get healing from. I got that shift up here. And so when I got that shift from a mindset perspective, suddenly now all the strategies that I'll be talking about today and the techniques, they were like putting effectiveness and efficiency on steroids. And so that's what I do today. I am now consider myself a former people pleaser. I'm no longer in the people pleasing game. I am, hey, boundaries awesome, right?
So awesome.
And I am so awesome. Like boundaries are like the best thing you can ever do in your life because it creates so much more space, not just for you in your business. It allows you to make a lot of more impact than you could ever imagine, not in business, in your personal life. It allows you to have fabulous relationships. It allows you to do things that you've only ever dreamed of doing because you didn't have the time to do it. So it's just like a ripple effect of abundance throughout your entire life when you get that piece right. And
isn't it
so
interesting though that we are so in this mindset that boundaries are a wall, that they are going to block people out, that they are going to shut things down. And we have it backwards because the boundaries are actually the way to expand. They are not meant to constrict.
Yes, and I 100% agree. And I'm literally talking from experience.
Yeah.
Right. I spent 20 odd years of my life thinking I did not have time to do anything else because I was so busy people pleasing. Right. I was so busy, like, oh my God, I don't want to be insensitive and I don't want to be hurt people's feelings and all of that stuff. And I didn't have time to do anything. And I look at it and I'm like, in the 2 years, Christy, that I have gotten this thing right, right? I've managed to write a book. I've been talking about writing a book like forever. I've written a book. The book is now published. And it's just like, whatever, what? Right? I have started traveling and my relationships have expanded. I'm exercising. Like, I'm just doing all the things, and I'm like, oh my God! I know. I'm like, I've just started this writing journey. I have more books coming, sort of thing. You suddenly get the space and the time to do so much more. Not that doesn't just impact you, but impact everybody around you. There's that ripple effects, right?
Yeah.
Just fabulous.
Yeah, and when if we're looking to change the world, starting within our own homes, starting within our client relationships, starting with our spouses, our children, our family, our friends, our coworkers, wherever we're at, if we're looking to create change, this is one amazing step that you can take that's going to actually allow you to expand faster. It's actually going to allow you, I find that people pleasers often get stuck, and I'm going to put both hands up here. This is me. I didn't know what I wanted. And this was because I spent so much of my life completely disregarding what I wanted, right? I was focused on, what do my parents want? What will make them proud? What will my teachers expect? How can I get a good grade? What will my coworkers think of me? I want them to like me. I want to be able to do well at my job. I want to get raises. I want all of these things that are all essentially external validation. So we get trapped in this cycle as people pleasers, and we might not notice, right? Some of these things can be really sneaky. And so I'm sure we'll be identifying some of those sort of sneaky people pleasing tendencies throughout this conversation. But when we get stuck in that mode, we lose track of who we are because we're so focused on the external. So our actions are coming from a place of driving external validation and acceptance from other people, when the truth is, the big truth is you should be driving that from within, validating yourself, accepting yourself, beginning with loving yourself.
Yes, that's it. And I agree. And I totally agree with you, which is why for me, I think one of the biggest shifts for me happened when the Lord gave me what I like to call the 3 tiers of love. When you're a people pleaser, when you're somebody who just wants to give and to see other people thrive around you, one of the things that we do is we mess it up where we say, it's the scripture says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself, right? And what we have done is that we have flipped the last two, where it's love your neighbor, and then you get what's left, right? When you're a people pleaser, when you're a giver. And so for me, I am a huge advocate of flipping it back to the way God intended. Just love God, because loving Him shows you how He sees you, and so you're able to love yourself the way He sees you, right? And then when you love yourself and you're honoring yourself, then you're able to serve and honor and love and honor others out of that, instead of you getting what's left, right? Can't heard the phrase, you can't serve people from an empty cup. And we know we always say that little cliche phrase, but it really, really is true. You have to honor you, love you first before you're able to love and serve others in a way that honors you both.
Yeah. And I agree. And I would add to that, just my personal spin on it is that loving God is loving yourself, because you have the divinity of God, universe, source, whatever word you want to use, labels are irrelevant here. It's this energy that is in you. And so in effect, loving on God, divinity, is loving yourself at the same time, because you are part of that, right? So it's this recognition of the divine within you that exists in every one of us that allows us to truly step into loving ourselves unconditionally, right? To step into accepting our humanity and our perceived flaws and weaknesses, which most likely, I like to say, are a superpower in disguise. You might not know it because someone once maybe told you that it was a weakness or something like that. And so you may be going about your life thinking that some of your greatest superpowers are in fact a weakness. That's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole other conversation.
A whole other conversation. We won't go there today. But on the topic of people pleasing and boundaries, especially when it comes to creating healthy relationships. Now, whether those relationships be with your spouse, your children, your clients, these boundaries are actually the ticket to having all of the things that you desire in life. Because what happens, right, if you're not creating boundaries, you're not actually expressing yourself authentically. And to me, this all comes back to authentic expression. If you don't know who you are and what you want, it's going to be hard to express that. And boundaries can actually be a bit of a way of us discovering a little bit more about who we are and what we want. For example, I will say, like, I have a boundary, and it's a silly thing, but I'm using a silly example because sometimes that makes it a little easier to grasp, in that when my partner pokes his toenails into my foot or ankle, like my whole meat suit is just like, no, just no. Right. And so cognitively, I'm like, it's not really a big deal. Like, he's not trying to hurt me, but my body is just like, get those toenails away from me. And it's silly. But sometimes this also goes to show that I'm reminded every time those toenails come near me that my body is like, no, shut that down. And so I just lovingly move my feet a little further away. And the message is very clear. But this comes from just recognizing, okay, this does not sit right with me for whatever reason, and trusting that. There doesn't need to be a reason. I don't need to explain myself. It just, that doesn't feel good to me. And that's okay, right? And so the more we explore these pieces of ourselves that we love and we want to lean into, and those parts that maybe we don't love, that, we want to really focus on accepting, we're going to start seeing some boundaries come out of that. So let's bring this conversation back to entrepreneurs for a minute, because I've been talking a little bit generally. Tell me, Chanel, what you think about boundaries with clients, and how does this affect our ability to really truly serve our clients? Because I think possibly people think that by setting boundaries, they're going to push clients away, or push potential clients away, or they're going to upset their clients, right? Classic people pleasers, right? we know we're there, so we know. But how can we set boundaries in a way that honors both you and them, so that you can get better client results? Because I know this is your specialty.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about this perception that we're going to upset our clients first.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is I'll share a story that happened to me a couple years ago. I had a client who I was working with, and this thing is, the client was also a friend. That makes it a little bit more tricky.
A little trickier, yeah.
And yes, right. And so I remember we had a situation that come up where my client couldn't actually meet our contract after a certain point in terms of like payments and support. And for me, it was fine for a while because there was a term in my contract that actually dealt with that, to say that, hey, you have until like 30 days to pay. No, because she was my friend, it was like a bit of a dilemma, because I'm like, how am I gonna have this conversation? I know I need to, and so forth. And I thought about not having it and just pretending like everything was okay, biting your tongue, because guess what? You're a people pleaser.
It's an
And
option.
it's an option, right? And I remember I just felt led that, hey, you cannot let this go. You have to handle this situation. And I had the conversation with my client. And when I had the conversation with my client, we were aligned. And I basically said that, hey, if this is not settled by this, I can no longer serve you until the balance is settled. And the client was in agreement. Now, it so happened that on the day that this term took effect, we were supposed to have a meeting. Now, my client messages me to say that, hey, can we push our meeting down by a couple minutes because I'm running late? And I remember I said to my client, hey, remember that today is the day, your balance hasn't been settled. Today is the day when I'm no longer able to continue. And let me tell you, Christy, my client did not respond. And I was like, holy shit, have I lost a friend?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Because it's just how my brain went.
Yeah.
Now, a couple days later, I got two emails. I got an email with the payment confirmation coming in to settle the balance. And I got an email from my client saying to me, thank you. Because I holding the boundary that I had set also gave her the space to actually think about how she was running her business and what she could do better and so forth. And she told me, like, just holding that boundary not only showed her that I really respected her as a client, but I also respected her as a friend, right? And so that's one of the things that I say a lot, even to my clients and any business owner who's worrying about, hey, are you going to be upsetting your client? Your clients will actually respect you a whole lot more if you hold that boundary versus if you bend over backwards trying to please them. And the funny thing about it is, instead of bending over backwards to try and please them, you actually make it harder for them to get results, because guess what, it causes them to lean more into the things that are holding them back. It causes them to feel comfortable not doing the things that they have committed to, which in fact end up hurting you both, right? And so for me, it becomes a conversation. Is a little fair, and being willing to have that conversation worth the respect of your client, and then them being able to get to where they need to get to faster? That's a question for you. I
Yeah.
know which one I choose.
Yeah. And I think that we can't expect other people to respect us if we're not going to respect ourselves.
Respect ourselves. Yes.
What boundaries are about doing, right? I love the way that Brene Brown talks about boundaries, and it's ultimately the instruction manual to loving both you and me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is how we can both feel loved and seen and accepted in a situation. It is not, as people think, a wall or a block. I view it personally as a bridge or as an invitation into, this is what it's like to be in my inner world. And this is what I require in order to feel safe, seen, loved, accepted in a close relationship. And if you don't communicate that, first of all, again, as Brene says, clear is kind, right? If you're not clearly communicating that, the other person really might not actually know.
No. Yeah.
And what kind of friendship is that when they don't actually know how you want to be loved, what it takes for you to feel respected? And so it's a guessing game. So I think that a lot of times we worry like, oh, they're going to think I'm just a huge bitch and I'm blocking them out and cutting them off. But the truth is, it's an opportunity to deepen the connection, the relationship. It is a way for you, and yes, it requires some vulnerability. Yes,
Oh,
it
yes.
does, right? That is a piece of the puzzle. And so this vulnerability allows you to share of yourself, to express these boundaries, and to communicate with your friend in a way that deepens their understanding of who you are
Yes.
and what feels good for you, so that they can hopefully take that invitation and come closer, right? So
Mhm.
often we have these fear-based what ifs, like, oh my God, what if they just ghost me? What if they tell me to F off and they never talk to me again? Well, first of all, I would say if that's the outcome, maybe they weren't not the good of friends as you might have thought that they were in the first place. But
Yes.
the truth is, those fears are probably often unfounded, because more often than not, people will view this as this
Mhm.
invitation to get to know you on a deeper level. And that will make your relationship feel more connected and more meaningful. So it's actually
There
a
we
win. And that fear is just keeping you from those massive wins that are awaiting you, right?
I could not agree more. I'm over here like clapping my hands as you're going, because I'm like, that's hitting the nail on the head. And that's the thing that a lot of people who are people pleasing, or they're recovering people pleasers, that's the thing that they really, really miss. I love the idea that you have of that bridge, right? Of both coming from either end of the bridge to meet in the middle, right? And then to be able to decide on a direction that you want to go together. But you can't do that if you don't know what's their expectations of you, what their boundaries are, what are your boundaries, and what do you expect of them. And then can get together and be like, do we align, yes or no? And then can we go to how can two walk together except they agree?
Yeah. And it's not that everyone is going to respect your boundaries, but that's not about
Mhm.
you, right? So if
That's not
you
about you.
encounter people that refuse to respect your boundaries, that's actually that says a lot about them, and it doesn't
Mhm.
really say anything about you. It doesn't make you bad or wrong for having the boundaries. It just means that the two of you are incompatible in that relationship, and that is actually okay, right? We have to become okay with recognizing not everyone is meant to be in our inner circle, right? That's
Yes.
okay. It's really is okay. I think that because we're so focused on this external validation in society at large, it's so focused on this external that we miss that, right? Because we're seeking, we're
Yes.
chasing, we're looking outside of ourselves. And
Yes.
it that ends up making us wrong in a lot of circumstances. Whereas the truth is, it wasn't wrong or bad. It just wasn't a fit.
Yeah, and do you know what that also ties quite nicely into, even from a client success perspective? I tell my clients all, and I talk about this a lot. There are two things I believe in very strongly. I believe in firing clients, and I believe in if somebody is not a good fit for you, and say no,
Yeah.
right? I think oftentimes because you want that validation, you're like, oh my God, but I don't know you. I really want to help you, and I can only help you a small bit, but I want to help you, and I'm willing to go build Rome in a day to make it happen. I'll take you on as a client when you know the person is not a good fit for either for you, and you're not a good fit for them. And so instead of referring that person to somebody else, you hang on to that person, and then you both limp on one leg, trying to make this through. And client resents you, you resent them. And it's the same thing around firing people. Sometimes you let people into your space, let people in, decide to serve this client, and you quickly realize that, oh, we're not aligned. Like, I've set these boundaries, I've set these expectations. They're going off doing whatever the hell they want to do. We have had conversations about this, and they have not changed. Hello, instead of keeping them and trying to get them, drag them by the ear,
Drag them.
like I say, drag them by the ear to where you need them to be. It may be just a nicer thing to say, hey, we've tried this. It's obviously not working. Let me release you.
Yeah. And it's okay to do that in business and in life, when you start
No.
to recognize that a relationship has maybe just kind of gone its course, right? It's run its
Mhm.
course. It's not aligned anymore. You've got what you need to get out of it. And I want to just sidetrack for just a split second here, because I think a lot of people talk about getting burned by a coach or burned by a leader. And I want to just point out that From the flip side, there are two ways you can look at it. You can look at it that you got burned by something, or you could look at it as an opportunity for you to learn something about yourself and why you felt compelled to work with someone who ended up not being a fit. And so I'm burned by is not taking personal accountability. Yes, the coach might not have delivered. That is the fact. But the truth is, you were still seeking something outside of yourself in this coach or mentor or guru leader, whoever you're looking to for answers. And you probably should have been sourcing that information from within, right? Or having someone who can help you draw that out from within instead of seeking the answers externally. So if you have ever been in this situation, it is an opportunity to look within and see, okay, well, what were the opportunities here anyways, even if it wasn't what you expected? Because oftentimes I know I have gone into something expecting one thing and yet coming out with something entirely different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. In most cases, for me, it's actually been a very good thing because I went in for the thing I thought I wanted, but I got the thing I needed. So that has been typically fruitful. But in the off chance, there have been some things that I realize now in retrospect, I was chasing the shiny object. I wanted the easy way. I wanted someone else's answers. And so when I can reflect back on that, it wasn't that like I got burned by the coach because their strategies didn't work for me. It's just that it wasn't aligned. And I was seeking out of this place of looking. It's very much like relationship, looking for someone to complete me, but it wasn't so much complete me as just give me the strategies and the easy ways, right, that I wanted. But we do that in relationship too. We look for someone to complete us. We look for someone to fill in the gaps. And the truth is we should be looking for someone who completely accepts us and is willing to grow alongside of us. That is what we need to be looking for. Anyways, back to boundaries yet again, because it's a nuanced topic and there are so many pieces that play out in all kinds of areas of life.
Are you tired of feeling burnt out and overwhelmed by trying to please everyone else? Do you find yourself constantly putting other people's needs ahead of your own, leaving you feeling unfulfilled and resentful? Break free from the cycle of people-pleasing and take back control of your life. Learn how to identify and break free from the patterns of people-pleasing that are holding you back. Learn practical tools and strategies to set healthy boundaries and prioritize your own needs so that you can find a sense of peace and fulfillment in your life. Imagine waking up each day feeling energized and excited about your life. Imagine living life on your own terms. Don't wait any longer to take control of your life and find true happiness. The Path to True Happiness and Authenticity, a masterclass for people pleasers.
So tell me, I know you have in your system, you have three types of business owners that fall into this boundary. Three ways that we can be looking at boundaries. So tell us what these three ways of looking at how we're setting boundaries is.
Well,
we talked a lot about the first one already.
Oh my God. So there's the boundaryless boss. That's the boss who is the people pleaser, the overgiver, the one who wants to make all their clients happy and kumbaya at the expense of themselves. Right? So you come in last. Good vibes only. I want to make you happy, make the approval go. And as long as we're friends and we have a good relationship, that is totally fine. Even if I have to sell a kidney to make it happy. Right?
Meanwhile, they're suffering, right? They're resentful. They're frustrated. They're freaking exhausted and burnt out, right? This is you in your job a couple of years ago.
Oh, yes. And meanwhile, their entire life is like blowing up around them. But you're like, oh, my client and I are friends. So we're happy, right?
Been there
for the musical.
Been there, done that. Yep.
That's type number one. I call that toxic type number one. You definitely don't want to be on that end of the spectrum.
No.
No, on the opposite side of the spectrum is what we call what the persons will say is the boss stage. And that's the one that is like, oh my God, these are my boundaries and I'm holding to them. I don't care what anybody else say, as long as they're my boundaries and they don't give a crap about their clients or anything. As long as they're okay, they're totally fine. And for me, this one is a big problem because they may say they want to make impact. They may say that they care about their clients, but when you look at the evidence of how their clients are treated and how their clients are the ones that are frustrated and the ones that are stressed out and the ones that have to do with all of these extra things just to see if they can actually get results, you realize they really don't care about people. They care about themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so
Care about their
we
bottom
don't
line.
want them care about their bottom lines. They care about just hitting the profits, and that's about it. And personally, I wouldn't want to work with somebody like that, either as a client or as a consultant. I wouldn't want to interact with people like that either because I love people. And I believe in integrity that if I'm going to tell you that I'm able to help you get this, I'm going to put the measures and steps in place to ensure that I'm able to adequately support you to get there in a way that honors you and our agreement and in a way that honors me. Right. And so that's toxic type number 2. Right.
Don't want
Now,
that either.
now, the fabulous one that everybody should actually aim to get to, this is my favorite type, and this is what I actually help my clients do, is get to being the boundary boss.
Yeah.
And this is a type that is like, ooh, yeah, let's go. Like, you're right in the middle of you're serving your clients in a way that honors them so that you're able to get the results with less work as possible. You've given them what they need to actually given them what they need to be supported, etc. But in the interim of doing that, you're also serving your clients in a way that honors you, your boundaries, and your quality of life. And that is the best one ever.
And
I like to think both parties will win.
Right? And let's just say if you're the client, don't you want your coach, your mentor, your leader to know what they want and to be able to clearly communicate that? That, to me, that is actually a sign of a really good leader, one that is going first, leading the way, showing me how it's done, and who knows who they are, right? So that's going to result in a lot less when we don't know who we are as a leader. We will the emotions might get mixed up. We might take on our clients' stuff. We might let them walk all over us. We might do all kinds of sort of coping mechanisms. Some of the other ones that you mentioned before, like overgiving and extending your time and all of these things. We might also have a lot of clients ghosting us or, not showing up for your calls or otherwise not really showing up to do the things because you're not the leader that is showing them how to do that, right? So where you are not embodying your fullest capacities, you are going to generally attract clients that might help you to notice those, we'll just say, right? It's not like it's a test, but it is something to bring to your awareness. So if you're experiencing things like that, it's just something to notice, something to be aware of. And absolutely, I think that middle ground is where we ought to be aiming, because that is, first of all, not only good leadership, but it's good self-love. It's good taking care of yourself, and it allows you to operate in this place of authenticity that will actually get you the things and the outcomes that you desire more quickly. Who doesn't want that? More clients, more financial freedom, more stability, more safety, more success by your terms, more adventures, more love, right? All from starting to create some boundaries.
Yeah, all from doing that. That's like I tell person, and you said it, like boundaries in every single area of your life is the key to having a successful life.
Yeah, you can't do it without. That's why boundaries is the second module in my program, Authenticity Unleashed, because these are a game changer. And if we don't have healthy boundaries, it probably does come from not knowing who we are, right? And we don't know who we are. We don't have the clarity about where we end and other people begin. We don't have the clarity about, oh, this is in alignment for me and this isn't quite a fit. So it's blurry, right? And so we lack the clarity, and we're can end up bumbling around. Ask me how I know. I have been there. So you don't have this clarity.
Oh, maybe you can help me figure it out. Like, my client hired me, and instead of me, as you said, me being the leader showing my client the way, It's kind of like, oh, let's figure this thing out together. Maybe you know better than I know, and then you expect the client to take. That's another thing that people like, oh, I want committed clients and clients who will do the work. When sometimes what they really mean is that I want a client who will lead ahead because I haven't quite figured this thing out myself, but they don't even know how to say that. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we'll sit with that one and just let that marinate, because yeah, that's definitely a possibility for sure. And that's probably a really uncomfortable possibility to really contemplate for many people who are experiencing that. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with you if you are. It's just to bring awareness to it, right? We can't change what we are unaware of, and we when we know better, we do better. And so by taking a look, instead of shying away and trying to ignore it and pretend it's not happening, or avoiding facing the reality, which, oh my gosh, I have been there and done that. And one of the biggest areas in which I found myself people pleasing was in my past marriage. And I really found myself bending over backwards to try and make him happy, to try and live up to the expectations that were set. And the truth is, it wasn't reasonable. The expectations were not really feasible. And it wasn't actually about me, right? This is the tricky thing. And so when you are a people pleaser, you really, you're trying to do these things, and then you interpret the things back in a negative way, often about yourself. And that wasn't a reflection that was accurate either. And so when my people pleasing efforts went unnoticed, right? I'm feeling pissed off. I'm resentful. I'm frustrated. I'm feeling not seen and not heard. And so I'm like, what the hell? Like, no matter what I do is never enough. And so you really can get into this cycle of not feeling like you're enough, or like you can ever be enough. It's like the striving for perfectionism, which is an illusion. Who's defining this perfectionism anyways? And so by stepping out of that, really, getting to know who I was, and also really recognizing that I was reading in a book this morning, and this really just caught my eye. And so it's such a good little piece of information, that trying to add to someone's happiness is entirely different, or contribute to their happiness is entirely different than trying to keep someone happy, right?
There we go.
And so we'll be clear on that with the people pleasing, that it's not a bad thing to want other people to be happy. That's something that happens when you're a heart-centered giving human. You genuinely do want to see other people happy, but not taking that responsibility on for keeping them happy, because that is a road to disappointment, resentment, frustration, and probably divorce.
Yeah.
Not probably. I should say that. I'm speaking
probably
for myself. But if you don't change it, you get really stuck in this pattern, right? And you will end up feeling more and more resentful, as I did, until I realized, holy shit, it's me creating this dynamic, trying to bend over backwards, martyring myself, and I don't have time to take care of me, so I'm just giving. And here I am. Yeah.
And it's funny. It's like, I think, and you're so right, that these things are like in every single facet of our lives, because you see this in business too. Like, I look around me and I was like, holy moly. It was like, for me, like a light bulb going off. Like, I sometimes talk to people and I'm like, you don't recognize that pattern exists too. And so sometimes you have these situations where a business owner will have actually poured in so much into a client, and the client is not moving, and they're getting resentful about it, and be like, oh, I'm not, you know what, I'm no longer going to be trying to have these conversations. And they'll go off and they go complain to their friends, and they go off and go complain to their partner, like, oh my God, this client is just simply impossible, right? And then you might have a divorce per se. That's in no way amicable, because you know what, you're like, screw this, sort of thing. And it was like, you got to go. Again, it happened because you enable it. Right. I remember my first client, when I saw it with her, and I said to her, she came to me and she was complaining about it. And I'm like, you do realize that you're enabling this client, right? If we actually go look at what's been happening, this client's progress throughout your program, and we go look at the stories that her performance is actually telling, you have been enabling this client from, it's now week 6, and this client has been demonstrating these behaviors from week 2, and you have just continued to enable that person instead of holding them accountable. Like, hello, it's uncomfortable, but a little bit of discomfort in the short term can be well worth the reward in the long term for both you and your clients, for both you and your partner. But a lot of us, we shy from the conversations that need to be had because guess what? It's uncomfortable.
Well, we need to learn how to embrace the discomfort, because the truth is, everything that exists out there that we're dreaming of, that we're hoping for, that we're longing for, that we desire, that we want, that we don't yet have, is out there in the uncomfortable zone, right? It's not here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be longing for it. If you already had it, if it was already in your comfort zone, you'd be like, oh, I'm all set. But it's not. And that's why you long for it. That's why you desire. That's why you're dreaming of it. And the fact that you and oh my gosh, I say this because I have absolutely done this so many times, to let my own fear of the discomfort, of the uncertainty, of the unknown keep me stuck. And by stuck, I mean like really just feeling like there's got to be something more, but I'm stuck in like analysis paralysis. I'm stuck in the worry and the fear that I might make a colossal mistake. Like, right? Our minds tell us all kinds of stories. And generally, our ego functions in a way to keep us safe. And I talk about this a lot. So if you've been listening to my stuff, you already know this, but I'm going to say it again because it's really important. And that safe is ultimately just familiar, right? Yeah. So our ego is trying to keep us in the familiar, AKA it's trying to keep us stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And so by gaining this awareness that the ego is trying to keep us stuck, we can start to look outside of that. We, first of all, need to stop assuming the ego that all of these thoughts are us, because they're not, right? It is this safety mechanism. That's not who you are. So if we can create a little bit of space and distance to observe the ego in all its glory, trying to keep us preserved, right? And the truth is, it looks a lot like we're self-sabotaging ourselves on the outside. I would say also like we're cock blocking ourselves. It looks like we're almost doing this intentionally from the outside perspective. But if you're really aware of what's happening under the surface, you'll recognize that it's actually self-preservation. It's actually your ego trying to keep you right here in your safe zone of familiar, because the uncertainty is a threat to our survival in the ego's mind. It's probably not, in like 99.9% of the time, we're actually not a threat, but our ego, like, oh, we might die here. Let's just stay in the familiar, right? Because it's safer here. So Chanel, share with me your 3 steps. I know you got a 3-step process to setting boundaries with grace, which is why we are here to talk about. And then I'll see what I might have to add to that with the piece of the boundaries that I have, the teachings that I have in my program. I'm sure they're probably very aligned.
I would not be surprised if they are. We have already touched on them in different ways and shaped in the conversation. Yeah. But 3 things. I like to call it the right fit person, right fit client, meaning you have sat down and you have thought about, hey, what is it that my client needs to bring to the table for them to thrive during my service? What is it that they need to bring to the table that will make it easier for them and easier for you to get the results that you're committing to help them to get? A lot of times, because marketing and sales methodologies will tell you, all you need to do is find a client with the right pain points. And then because you're out to make money and you're a business owner, you're like, yeah, they need to have a credit card and bring that to the table too. Few business owner ever really consider, like, dude, what is it that my client needs to bring to the table? What are the resources? What is the mindset? What are the skills? What are the tools that they need to bring to the table to make this collaboration and this relationship work, right? And so that's my first step. That's the thing that we look at the most with my clients. Yeah. The second step is a simple path to results. Now, Funny thing is, I actually did a post earlier, and somebody responded to say that, a lot of people never do consider the scope that it takes to get the work done in their program. So a lot of times business owners will be like, oh, I have a bunch of resources that I want to give you, whether it's videos, worksheets, a couple action items that you need to be doing. And it's kind of like free for all. We just flow,
Yeah.
and you never really actually do consider like, but you've said that you'll be able to get this thing done in 6 months. Like, have you thought about like the milestones, the key activities around that people need to do to get things done? Have you thought about the dependencies between activities? Have you thought about the things that the tools and the resources that your clients actually need to thrive and to be able to do each activity to the best of their ability? Have you ever even thought about, the recurring actions that your clients need to do and how you're actually going to be monitoring those to ensure that you're doing that? Redundancies and so forth, because sometimes we like to pack our services full with the stuff because we know it all. Because it's like, oh my God, I have so much to give my client and I want to give them everything, but they don't need everything.
Nope.
They
And that
only
can put
need
them
is just
into like overwhelm, right? And analysis paralysis if we're giving
analysis
too
paralysis.
much.
Yeah, and confusion and all of that. And so for me, a simple path to results is one that is clearly unambiguous. It is crystal clear to your client that we need to do these 10 things to get you from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And not only do you need to do these 10 things, but here are the applicable and the relevant resources to support you along the way so that they're able to get through it with as little confusion, with as little frustration as possible, and you're able to take them through it with as little, without them having to come to you with a whole lot of questions, without you having to do a whole lot of hand holding, without you having to do a lot of dragging by the hair because they're confused and don't know what to do, and then they get stuck, right? And so that's number two. So number one is the right fit client. Number two, a simple path to result, which I like to call the right path. And now number three is the right support. Now, what I've found is that, and this happens, it doesn't matter if you're a small business, a medium-sized enterprise, or even a large corporation. I see this a lot, right? Where the onus is put on the client to raise their hand when they need support. And I can tell you, probably 90% of the time, it's already too late. And so, what I talk about is the right support is giving your clients support when they need it, not when they want it. Right? And to do that, you actually have to have a mechanism in place where you're monitoring client performance, and you're looking to see what are those indicators that says, hey, this what we've basically agreed that the client will be working on is not working, and therefore I need to step in and support them because guess what? They're not the expert. I am.
Yeah.
Right. And I can see the signs way, way quicker than they can because guess what? I am the expert. Right. And so to be able to step in and give them that support way ahead of when they realize, oh crap, I'm now up the river without I'm up a creek, and it's just like it's gonna be messy. And at that point you're in firefighting mode because you're like, oh crap, it's now too late, and now there's a whole lot we're gonna have to redo to get it back on track. Right. So it's giving the right support when your clients need it, not when they want it or they think they need it.
Yeah, and this would tie into other areas of life too, because as you were talking, I'm thinking this actually would loosely apply to relationships as well. You got to find the right person that's the right fit for you, and we have to try and force that one. We'll often try and, minimize the things that don't look like they're working, and we'll focus on the things that do look like they're aligned. I have been there. I have actually spent entire relationships looking at the potentiality versus the reality. So, personal note, remember to look at actions because they speak louder than words. Okay, little PSA for everybody.
And I support that PSA.
Yeah, it's easy to get kind of sucked into that, right? So, we if you're in that, we see you because we have been there and we know how easy it is to kind of get looped into that. And then the next piece is being on the same path with your relationship with a partner as well. You've got to be going the same direction, right? You've got to have a similar mindset as far as growth and growing together, and you've got to come in with this this mindset of acceptance, because we're all human. And if you're going to expect your partner to be something superhuman, you're going to be disappointed, and that's going to be on you with your expectations. So working on releasing some of those expectations, but also proactively moving towards the goals that you share in common, right?
Yeah.
And then really ultimately bringing together the tools, the resources, the support, asking for help, doing the work. And it's generally not advisable in a relationship to wait until the wheels are falling off the bus to go to couples therapy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That is a late point. And it's going to be real hard, just like you said, with the client situation, to reel that back in. Once it has gone that far, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of tension that makes it even more difficult to deal with. Just like we were talking about earlier, and you have a sort of a sticky relationship with a client. If we don't address that quickly, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So these things, like I say, I just wanted to tie it all back into the relationships, because there is connection to each and every one of these pieces. The client stuff is your specialty. The relationship part is my specialty. So just tying this all together, because it really does affect all areas of our life. So we want to make sure that, 2 for 1, relationships affected, all the relationships affected, business, personal relationships, and you're going to be on a solid path to creating a life that actually feels good to you, which is the goal.
That's
so
the goal.
Tell us, Chanel, a little bit more, unless there's anything you want to add to that, you're welcome to add to that. And if you don't have anything more to add to that, I would love for you to tell the listeners where we can find you, and about any offers that you might like to share about on this topic, so that they can reach out and get started working with you.
Okay. So you can find me on Facebook, like Chanel. Think Chanel, Coco Chanel number 5, except I'm always Chanel number 1.
Yeah.
Just like joke around that. And Chanel Robe. So my last name is Think the Clothing. So it's Chanel number 1, the clothing robe. Right. You can find me on Facebook, or you can actually reach out to me via email at hello@therobeway.com. Now, in terms of offers, I actually launched something specially new just for this podcast. It's just like, yeah, Christy, I like you and I like your audience. And I like your people, right? And it's called the Boundary Boss Hour, which is a 1-to-1, 1-hour intensive with me to look at a high level at these 3 areas in your business, and how you can actually make small refinements within 1 to 2 weeks that would actually set you on the path to being the boundary boss that you were always meant to be. We don't want you to be the boss bitch. We don't want you to be the boundaryless boss. We want to give you the tools that you need to set boundaries and expectations that allows you to be the boundary boss that respect your boundaries and have an amazing quality of life, even as your clients get results and you maintain awesome relationships and just have a profitable business that's just fabulously sustainable. So if you're interested in the Boundary Boss Hour, I think Christy's going to drop a link.
Yeah, I'll have a link
somewhere.
Right? In the show notes, in the comments.
Y'all just click that link and go get yours today.
Yeah. And I think that what's really important to note here is that not only are you going to get this information for your business, but you're going to get clarity around living authentically, right? That again is the foundation, is just figuring out who you are. And it's probably not who you thought you were, right? Because we have so much information coming at us, a lifetime worth of information. And some of it is the truth and some of it is not. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about you. It's what you think about yourself. And so confident people are actually just really authentic people standing in their power, right? It's not like they've got some special skill that you're lacking and that you have to go learn how to be confident. You just need to learn how to be you, because when you're you, the confidence flows naturally. And the clarity comes from knowing who you are and taking action from that place. And I think more often than not, we get stuck in the analysis paralysis. And so we think we need clarity. We're lacking clarity. We don't know how to find this clarity. But the truth is, we've got to take some small steps. That's where we find the clarity, right? And the same thing is true with boundaries. If we take some small steps, if we test it out, you're not committed to life with every boundary that you set, you can change them, right?
Yeah.
You can communicate them differently. You can learn how to communicate them in a softer, loving way. You can learn how to communicate them in a firmer way. You can adjust them for different people because we do have different boundaries with different people. It's all okay. So just massive permission slip for this area of boundaries and personal authenticity with a lot of grace, because you're evolving. And so as such, your boundaries and your relationships are going to be evolving as well. So big permission slip to step into being authentically you and to start exploring. My program ultimately is not as focused at all on the business side of things. It is more from a personal perspective, but it really does start with this awareness. From the awareness comes the clarity. From the clarity comes the boundaries that we can set. And underlying all of it requires some vulnerability, which is courageous, right? Because we actually have been taught to shy away from being vulnerable, as it's been seen as maybe a weakness in society. But those of us who know what's what, those of us that are in touch with the emotions, that we're in touch with who we are, know that we cannot be authentic without a little bit of vulnerability. We cannot create these deep, meaningful relationships that we desire without vulnerability. We cannot, love ourselves even without a little bit of vulnerability.
Yeah, vulnerability is a superpower. That's what it is.
Yeah, and we absolutely need to lean into that vulnerability. Now, you can choose the right people. Okay, so I'll be clear. You don't want to necessarily be going all vulnerable to everybody out there in the world.
That's number one.
We do want to be mindful, right? And choose the people who do hold a safe space for us, because otherwise that would be foolish. But knowing ourselves allows us to be able to know who is and isn't a safe space for us oftentimes as well. So bringing it back to that relationship with self is just such a key foundation to experiencing all of the things in life that you desire. Any final thoughts, Chanel, that you would like to share before we wrap up this incredible conversation?
I'll just say one thing. My desire for, everybody who hears my voice is for you to get into that place where you're able to set boundaries with grace and you're able to serve others in a way that honors you and honors them. That's my prayer for you.
Yeah.
Go live that authentic life.
Amen, sister. Thank you so much for being here with me for this incredible conversation. I know that the listeners are going to pull out all kinds of nuggets. I hope they'll share with us and let us know the biggest ahas from this conversation. As always, I want to remind you all how much I love you and invite you to, let's go do some epic shit, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Create Your Happy's special bonus season. I trust this real, raw, uncut conversation will fuel your inner fire and provide you with the practical action steps needed to propel you forward. It's time to unlock your path to consciously creating an impact and leaving your legacy. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with other women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. My guest and I would love to hear from you. You'll find the links to connect with us both in the show notes. And if you're ready to take your life, relationship, and business to the next level, I invite you to consider working with me one-on-one. Together, we'll uplevel every aspect of your beautiful human journey to create the fulfilling relationships that you desire and deserve. Reach out to learn more about how we can embark on this transformative journey together. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.